The text lit up my phone screen at 8:12 a.m., sharp and sterile as a medical report. We've decided it's best you don't attend the engagement party. No greeting, no explanation. Just that. I stared at it, waiting for it to disappear, for another message to follow, something to soften the blow. Sorry that came out wrong, or Talia's stressed, just give us a day. But nothing came. The silence around that sentence screamed louder than any apology ever could. My hands were already beginning to tremble when I looked down at the card resting on my lap. The hand-painted invitation. Cream cardstock pressed with gold leaf flowers, the kind I used to plant in Nolan's childhood garden. I'd written their names in cursive myself. Designed, printed, sealed. There were 87 of them. I looked around the room. Every inch reminded me of that party. Swatches of fabric still draped across my armchair from choosing table linens. My laptop opened to a spreadsheet detailing vendor quotes and final confirmations. I'd negotiated with the florist, personally secured the rooftop venue 4 months in advance, and even paid the $200 deposit myself. And now I was unwelcome. I called him. Straight to voicemail. So I sat. In the stillness. In the middle of a house that had become a shrine to a celebration I was no longer allowed to witness. Talia had once texted me at midnight in a rush of excitement. "You're the backbone of this whole party, Maris. I don't know what we'd do without you." Apparently, they'd figured it out. The invitation slipped from my lap to the floor, landing face down. I didn't pick it up. I reached for my mug only to realize the coffee had gone cold, just like everything else. Across the room, my phone buzzed again, but not from Nolan. Not an apology, just a photo from someone at brunch. They were all there, everyone but me. And none of them looked like they noticed I was missing. I set the mug down and called my sister. The call rang 3 times before going to voicemail. I waited, then called again. Nothing. My sister had always picked up. Even when we fought. Even when she was half asleep. But this time, nothing. I stared at her name on the screen. Marta. We used to be each other's lifeline. Now even she was quiet. I tried again this time, my ex-husband's sister, June. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce, but she and I used to be close. She adored Nolan when he was little, called him her shadow. If anyone would understand, it'd be her. She picked up. "June," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you hear about the engagement party?" A pause. Then a sigh. "Maris, it's not your day. Let them have it." I blinked, stunned. I planned half of it. Paid for most of it. "I know," she said gently. "But Nolan's grown. You have to let go. Let go. Of what? My son. My place in his life." She said something else, but I'd stopped listening. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. I set the phone down, staring out the window. Outside, the neighbors' wind chimes danced in the breeze. Inside, my ears filled with a different kind of ringing shame. Rejection. The echo of voices that no longer welcomed mine. Then the phone buzzed again, a notification from Nolan's Instagram. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. A photo Nolan, Talia, 3 of her bridesmaids, 2 of his college friends, and June. Yes, June, laughing around a table at a trendy brunch spot. The caption read, "Surround yourself with those who matter." No tag for me. No mention. Not even a hint that I existed. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. I'd ordered the table runners from the same vendor that decorated that brunch venue. I'd secured that booking myself, and now I wasn't even worth a mention. I turned the phone over and set it on the table face down. My hands felt like ice. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was erasure, and I finally knew it. I opened the cabinet where I kept my project folders, hands moving on instinct. The blue one with the gold clip was labeled Nolan and Talia. Engagement. I pulled it out, sat at the dining table, and flipped it open like it might still make sense. Inside were swatches of fabric I'd matched to the napkins, photos of centerpieces I'd trialed in my living room, a dried sprig of eucalyptus I'd pressed into the cover page, now brittle. I lifted a small stack of hand-painted menu cards, cream cardstock with watercolor edges, and calligraphy done late at night with aching fingers. I'd used lace from my old wedding dress to trim the welcome sign. Talia had said it was sentimental and romantic. I smiled at that memory, then let it fall flat. A receipt slid loose from the folder, the $300 to $200 deposit for the rooftop venue. I paid it myself when Nolan said they were tight on funds. "We'll pay you back after the wedding," he'd said, kissing my cheek. That was 5 months ago. I turned to the final page, the contract. My name, my address, my signature, all binding. They'd pushed me out, but the legal weight of that party still sat on my shoulders. I sat back in my chair folder, still open, and let the air settle. In their eyes, I was unfit for the vibe. Unfit to be seen, but good enough to pay, to plan, to bleed behind the scenes. They hadn't removed me. They'd hollowed me out. I stared at my own handwriting on the checklist. Finalize lighting with venue. Done. Confirm guest list, RSVP. Talia's task. Deliver hand-carved initials to venue. I'd arranged them with a local artist, each letter carved from walnut, sealed to weatherproof. They'll still use them, I thought. My lace, my ink, my money. But not my name. I closed the folder slowly. Not like a door, but like a curtain on a part of me I'd handed over willingly. And now I was ready to start pulling back. Diane showed up that afternoon with 2 coffees and a look that told me she already knew more than I'd said. She set the cups down and didn't bother with small talk. "You look exhausted," she said softly, glancing at the folder on the table. "You still working on that party?" I nodded, though the word working felt wrong. It wasn't work anymore. It was penance. "Why?" she asked, folding her arms. "Why are you still helping?" After what they did, I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. Finally, I said, "Because I thought if I kept going, they'd see me again. See how much I cared?" Her expression softened. "Maris, you've already proven that 100 times over." They just stopped looking. I tried to laugh, but it came out like a sigh. She reached across the table and placed her hand on the stack of contracts, the same ones I'd been clinging to like a lifeline. "You signed every one of these, didn't you?" I nodded. "Then you can unsign them too." I blinked at her, startled by the simplicity of it. She wasn't suggesting revenge, just release. The idea sat heavy in my chest, slow and unfamiliar. "I don't want to ruin their day," I said finally. "You're not," Diane replied. "You're just giving it back to them. Let them carry what you've been carrying." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was filled with quiet understanding, the kind that only comes from someone who's seen you fall apart before. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the untouched coffee until it went cold. Then I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, uncertain at first. Then steady. 1 email to the caterer, 1 to the florist, 1 to the venue. I didn't explain much, just that I was stepping back from the event for personal reasons, and that Nolan would now be their main contact. When I hit send on the last one, the quiet in the room felt different, lighter, not empty, just mine. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept. The first call came early the next morning. "Maris, this is Teresa from the catering team. Nolan isn't answering my messages. Are you still overseeing the event?" I paused, glancing at the open folder still sitting on my table like a ghost of habit. "No," I said, evenly. "He is." A long silence followed before she murmured, "He doesn't seem to know what he's doing." I didn't reply. I simply thanked her for her time and hung up. 10 minutes later, a text from the florist blinked on my screen. "Lighting colors aren't finalized." "Should I match the table arrangements to the original palette?" I typed back. "You'll need to confirm with Nolan. Then I placed the phone face down, determined not to answer again. By noon, the calls kept coming, each one more frantic than the last. The decorator, the lighting team, the band coordinator, all of them trying to reach the person who had always fixed everything. But that person wasn't available anymore. It wasn't until late afternoon that the call I'd been expecting finally came. Maris. The voice on the other end was familiar and sharp. My ex-husband, Glenn. He sounded like he always did when he thought he was being reasonable. I just got off the phone with Nolan. He says you've dropped everything on him out of nowhere. What's going on? I told him I was done, I said. I'm not part of this anymore. Glenn sighed, the kind of long, patronizing breath that used to end every argument between us. You're being dramatic. It's about Nolan. He's under pressure. Just help him get through this. I raised Nolan, I said quietly. But I won't raise his ego. There was a pause on the line, one of those rare silences where even he couldn't find something to correct. I just don't understand you, he muttered finally. You never did. I replied and ended the call. I stood by the window for a while afterward, watching the late sun bend through the glass. My phone buzzed again on the table, but I didn't move to answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and typed, "Flight to Honolulu." I booked the flight without flinching. Oahu, departure, 8:12 a.m. Same morning as the engagement party. The irony wasn't lost on me. I closed the laptop and stood there for a long moment, listening to the stillness of my apartment. The chaos was behind me, flower orders, color palettes, chair counts. I walked to my closet, pulled out a suitcase, and paused before unzipping it. Inside, I placed one sundress, a light cotton one with pale yellow stitching I hadn't worn since my last real vacation. Then my sandals, my sketchbook, the one I hadn't opened in a decade. It was tucked behind old photo albums and felt almost foreign in my hands. But I packed it anyway. Maybe it was time. At dawn, I rode to the airport in silence, letting the city blur past. I didn't look back. In the terminal, I sat by the gate, coffee warming my palms as I watched families shuffle past parents, balancing strollers, teenagers glued to their phones, elderly couples holding hands like it was nothing. I wondered what Nolan was doing, if he'd realized yet that things were unraveling, if anyone had noticed I was gone, but my phone stayed silent. No apology, no message, no where are you, just nothing. And oddly, that nothing felt like freedom. I opened my sketchbook, the spine still stiff from years of disuse. On the first page, I drew a single hibiscus. I wasn't sure why. It just came out that way, bright open, not reaching for anything. The boarding call echoed through the terminal. I tucked the pencil behind my ear and zipped the sketchbook closed. My coffee was half finished, but I left it behind, standing up with a calm I hadn't felt in months. The gate agent smiled as I handed her my pass. "Enjoy your trip," she said. I nodded. "I already am." I landed in Honolulu to the sound of soft ukulele music echoing through the terminal. The air felt different, salted, warm, free. I turned my phone to airplane mode and didn't look back. But while I was tracing the shoreline on foot, barefoot, and far from everything Asheville was unraveling, Carlos, the venue manager, had emailed me once the night before a short message. "Are you sure you're out?" I never replied. He'd soon find out I meant what I said. By noon, Eastern Time, the caterer had delivered trays of cold cuts instead of the Southern menu I had carefully curated. The peach cobbler forgotten, the vegetarian options miscounted, the floral arch I'd helped design, real eucalyptus and ivory roses, was gone. In its place, dollar store plastic garlands barely hanging straight. Guests began posting online before the first toast. Disorganized mess. Where's the planner? Did someone forget the bride's side of the family? The custom name cards, which I had once embossed by hand in a sleepless haze, were nowhere to be found. Guests milled around, unsure of where to sit, bumping into folding chairs that weren't evenly set. Talia's voice rose at the bar, clearly audible over the band's awkward jazz set. "You said it'd be handled," she hissed. "You're the one who said she didn't fit your vibe." Nolan snapped back, glass in hand, neck flushed red. The band faltered. A groomsman caught it all on his phone, shaky video, poor lighting, perfect drama. By sunset, it was online. I saw none of it. I was lying on the beach with the sound of waves in my ears, eyes closed, sketchbook resting on my stomach. Somewhere across the ocean, the party I had once built was falling apart, piece by careless piece. And I wasn't there to catch it. I was never supposed to be. The ocean was calm that morning. The sky stretched wide and forgiving. I walked barefoot along the shoreline, letting the tide roll over my feet and pull away again, soft and steady, like it had nowhere else to be. For the first time in months, my body wasn't braced for impact. I could feel the weight leaving me with every wave. My phone buzzed in the tote bag I'd tossed on the sand. Once, then again, then 3 times in a row. I let it ring. The sound didn't belong here. When it finally stopped, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the phone out the screen, already filling with notifications. "Nolan, Mom? Please call me. It's a disaster. Talia, we need you. Please just help us fix this." Then a message from my sister, "You made your point. Now come fix it." I stared at the screen for a long time, not angry, not even surprised. Just tired. They wanted the version of me who always picked up, who always solved what they broke. The version who knew everyone's schedules, handled every emergency, cleaned up after every mess. But that woman was gone. I pressed the side button, silencing everything. The hum of the ocean took over again. The sun climbed higher, warm on my shoulders. I sat down on the sand and buried my phone beneath my towel. The world could wait. I pulled out my sketchbook instead. The pages had begun to curl from the salt air. On the next blank sheet, I started to draw not flowers this time, but a single chair facing the sea. Empty. Still. The kind of peace you don't beg for, you just claim. Somewhere far away, they were still calling. Maybe shouting, maybe realizing. But here, the only sound was the water meeting the shore. I hadn't left to make a point. I'd left to make space, and I wasn't going back. I was sipping guava juice by the pool when Diane called. Her voice buzzed with something I hadn't heard in months, pride. "It's live," she said. And Maris, "It's catching fire." She'd written the post in one sitting, she told me after our last call, titled, "The Mother Who Planned the Party But Wasn't Allowed In." She didn't use names, but the story was unmistakably mine. The hours, the hand-painted signs, the silence, the erasure. I opened the link as we talked. The words on screen cut cleaner than I could have said them myself. She built it all, then was asked to step aside so others could take credit for her labor. Not because she failed, but because she reminded them of their own. By sunset, the comments section had exploded. Women from all over, mothers, daughters, aunts, shared stories like mine, of being pushed aside after giving everything, of smiling through betrayal, of finally choosing themselves. I cried reading this. I planned my son's wedding too, until his fiancée said I wasn't stylish enough. I thought I was the only one. I read every line, not with tears, but with a strange, calm ache, like an old wound finally acknowledged by the world. By morning, my inbox was full. A woman named Marla from Asheville's historic district wrote, "We're hosting a spring gala at the hotel you booked. Would you consider designing it?" I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed yes. I'd love to. It wasn't about proving anything to Nolan anymore, or Talia, or even my family. It was about stepping into a space where I was wanted and letting that matter more than the rooms I was excluded from. Diane texted again that night. "You good?" I sent her a photo of my sketchbook. The new page was filled with Arches florals and the first notes for a coastal spring event. For once, I wasn't designing through tears. I was designing through freedom. 2 weeks later, I walked back into my house like I'd never lived there before. The air felt still undemanding. No checklists on the counter. No boxes of decorations stacked by the door. No pressure to be impressive or indispensable or enough. Just me. I set my bag down and stood there for a moment listening to the silence. My phone buzzed on the entryway table, a thread of voicemails still unplayed, still multiplying. I didn't touch it. Let them talk into the void. I was done being the echo. Outside, the sun cut through the late afternoon haze. My backyard, untamed and unapologetic, waited, like it knew I'd forgotten how to tend to things just for myself. I grabbed my old gloves from the shed. They were stiff, sun-bleached, the fingertips worn through. Still good enough. I knelt near the corner fence where weeds had swallowed the flower bed I once cared for. I pulled slowly, methodically, letting the dirt settle under my nails. Each root I yanked out felt like another expectation discarded. The ones they'd planted in me. The ones I let grow too long. I found a small packet of wildflower seeds tucked in a rusted tin. I don't even remember buying them, but they felt right. No symmetry, no perfection, just color, just life. I made a shallow trench, scattered them like a whisper, and pressed the soil back down with the flat of my palm. No grand opening, no applause, just something new quietly beginning. Not for Nolan, not for Talia, not for anyone who only saw me as a source. For me. I wiped my hands on my jeans and sat back on my heels. The yard was still a mess, overgrown, uneven, chaotic. But this corner? This was mine. I didn't need a party to prove my presence. I didn't need a title to justify my love. Some gardens bloom better when no one's watching. And finally, I was ready to bloom too.